on, my friends? This is Rick, and your seat at the table. And this is New Year's Eve, 2022, 19 something. Jesus, I'm getting old. So anyway, I want to do some wrapping up of cycle number 9 for my Interstellar Frontiers, or a game never published yet, and go through some various basic stuff. Okay, so I had a couple cargo ships come in. They brought in some supplies or some resources they wanted to sell. They asked for some stuff they wanted to purchase. I didn't have any of this stuff that I rolled up for them to purchase. A different ship came in and was bringing some cargo that including some ship components, and I was contemplating purchasing those as well. And in addition to that, there was some special cargoes, which included a platinum bringing some stuff to set up a town, and we want to deal with that. And of course, a construction, second construction company, which basically would allow me to do twice as many builds at a time on my planet, which is not a bad idea. It's not a bad thing to happen. There's some ups and sides and downsides to it. Of course, early on, we're only into the end of our third operating cycle for the planet, for the colony, which means we're really struggling financially right now. We are hitting that limit where our surplus is about to run out, and we have to as a house, we can choose to go in the hole a little bit. I don't recommend going in the hole constantly, because then you get this really big negative, and in reality you should have no surplus cash to purchase anything. It's a matter of how this stuff plays out. So we're going to look at some of this stuff. First things first is I did a balance for my exchange for the cycle, and the previous cycle I had a positive credit inflow of 194.7 credits, and I had a negative outflow of 226.2 credits. So obviously the colony's costing more to operate than it's generating, which is a problem. This netted me a loss of 96 credits. I also purchased that damaged ship, and this brought my surplus of credits on hand down to 264.4, which we're getting down there. So the ship that came in brought a lot of cargo, in some cases too much, more than I can afford to purchase. So for an example, Nobilium, the cargo cruiser, had 79 tons. Since my planet was needing this in some quantity, the price I'm going to pay for it is above what you would want it to be. And so for 79, it would have been 141 credits to purchase 79 tons. And so I have to look at that and go, I want some of it, but I can't really justify that kind of expense. So if I went full out and purchased everything that I wanted to buy, this included the entire run of resources and manufactured materials that cargo cruiser was offering to sell me, and the cargo or the ship components I wanted, and I went through the ship component list too, and everything has a cost. Of course, that's kind of the way this stuff's supposed to play out. So in the case of that list of stuff coming along, most of those things, I mean, the ECM3 was 11 credits, the science package is 140 credits, cargo bay 3 is 31 credits, the naval particle battery is 43 credits. The SLD, the sublight drives, there was 17 of them. They're 12.5 credits a piece when you buy them. So that would have been way more than I could afford. I chose to buy 5, which was at that point was still 62.5 credits. And so most of these ship components were outside my range to purchase at the time. And so I chose to forego them. It's just like like I said, if I had purchased I did choose to purchase the Cargo Bay 1 for 13.5 credits and 5 of those sublight drives for 62.5 credits. And then if I'd have combined that with buying the entire cargo that was being offered from the cargo ship, I would have had a negative 431.5 credits, which is grossly above. That would be 254 more credits than I have in my surplus, or my financial ministry would be totally in the hole bad. And you could choose to do this. You could choose to do this. You're running the game. You play the game how you choose. I choose not to be in the hole all the time. because it has problems. Ideally, when you're in the hole, you don't have that surplus cash to purchase things like damaged freighters and ship components and things that come along. These extras need to come out of your hard cash supply, or you need to negotiate with somebody to purchase them for the house, which is a whole nother set of negotiations. And if you follow negotiation rules, then I don't consider that a cheat. I think that's a bit of a dodge, but not a cheat. But if you ignore the negotiation rules, i.e., your platinums have got limited resources too. They're not just endless piggy banks that you can go tap whenever you choose to get something that you don't want the house to pay for. So if you hit that negative part and then they say no, no's no. You know, if you choose to creatively change that outcome, then that's how you're playing your game. Good for you. I am not here to tell you how to play your game, just telling you how the mechanics of the game is designed to set up. So, that on the positive side. With the material that I did purchase from the cargo cruiser, mining the material that I mined on my planet, the material that's being manufactured by my existing factories, my net value increased from the previous cycle. My previous positive for everything, including taxes and all the exchange generated, previous positive was 194.7. My current positive is 365.55. So we're looking at a net increase of almost 70 credits, which is a great thing. Now, of course, the downside is sometimes your negatives go up as well. In the case of stuff that you're mining or you're purchasing, if your planet is consuming it, it's going to work its way through that surplus. So now I have a surplus of a couple items, which helps me generate a net profit from that commodity versus a negative profit for having a negative need, unmet need. So the downside is my need is now being met from that surplus or that material that I purchased. So for the cycle, instead of being 13 credits in the hole for that particular resource, I'll be 22 credits in the positive for this cycle. And then next cycle, I will subtract the planetary needs from that surplus, which will drop the surplus down, and the net revenue from taxes will be less than what it was this cycle, but it'll still be better than being in the hole. So basically, we saw a negative 226.2 last cycle, which is greater than the house positive. So obviously, I'm going in the hole as a cycle at the end of cycle 8. So at the end of cycle 9, I have a negative 284.39 versus my positive of 365.55. So I'm actually coming out with a small surplus of 81 credits as opposed to being negative 96 credits that I was at the end of cycle 8. Yes, Frankie, you can't come in. Yes. You can just hear her scratching that door. She's having a fit. She don't like the closed door. Is what it is. So in that case, I'm coming out and things are going as planned. Like I said, the Colonial mining operation is mining. That's increasing a couple of resources. I didn't have any surplus in items that the cargo ship rolled up to purchase, so I couldn't make any revenue that way. And I can levy some small landing fees for the ships that did arrive. So that's only like a half a credit or a credit and a half. It's not going to amount to a lot. Every little bit helps, but it's not going to amount to a whole lot. There's also my mining ships are off mining on other operations. It will take several cycles for them to fill their cargo holds or run out of supplies to return and unload them. But as you can see, the whole point there is that while they're doing that, I have my scout ships further exploring because I want to find locations for all the raw materials, all the resources that I need for my exchange. So every one of these things that's a negative, I want to find a way to fill. Unfortunately, some of these things are manufactured items which require factories. So looking as right off the top of my back end of my I need iridium, and I'm only using 2 tons per cycle. So it's only a negative of 2 credits per cycle. So if I can find a source and I can mine 20 tons of it and I can bring it in, then I would have 20 tons of surplus, and I would reverse that -2 to a like an 18 credit positive for one cycle, and then it would drop down to 18, which would then become a 17, and then 16, which become a 15, and so on and so on. So it's not really rocket science. I tried to keep it as simple as I could. In the nutshell is there's actually a point when you have too much surplus in your exchange that you'll start losing money again. This is where the warehouse comes into play. So if you get to that 50% mark, so you are going to basically charge for every surplus item you have, you lower the credit value by 0.1. So if I have 1 ton of something and I have a 0 need, I'm going to make 1 credit off of it. So if I have 10 tons and a 0 need, I'm going to make 9 credits off of it. If I have 90 tons and I have a 0 need, I'm going to make 9 credits off of it. You see how that kind of plays out, or 0.9 credits for it. So I'm not going to make a lot. So at some point, I hit that sweet spot of 50 tons. 50 tons for our current exchange setup allows you to make 25 credits. And there's actually a caveat in there that says you can add 0.5 for having a balance. So you could get 25.5 credits for having 50 tons in there. And then anything extra goes into your warehouse. Now, if I have a consumption of iridium of 2, and I manage to put 30 tons in my exchange, or 30 tons in my warehouse and 50 tons in my exchange, I'm going to tap that warehouse to supply that -2. So I keep making that 25.5 credits every cycle for as long as I freaking can. And hopefully find another source of iridium at that point. Ideally is as you get to a point where you supply enough of your exchange to keep the prices moderate. So one of the horrific prices of trying to buy things in bulk is the opposite side. So the opposite side is they crawl up by a point. So if I need 1 ton of something, I have a -1, and a ship comes along and they sell me 1 ton, I'm going to pay 1.01 credits for it. So 10 tons would be 1.10 credits per ton. So 100 tons would be right. And so if it just keeps going up and down. Now the warehouse has a max limit of 100 tons. I believe it's 100 or 150. I think it's 100 tons. It's based off the somewhere of the cargo bay. With a surplus, your exchange being able to hold 100 tons. So this brings up another set of problems. If by chance I manage to exceed my capacity, both in the exchange, having too much in the warehouse means you have to put it on the exchange, which forces your money to drop. So you don't make as much. So you need to either figure out creative uses for it or sell it. The mechanics don't allow you to just chuck it out back. You can't just pile up raw iron out back because the elements will mess with it, critters will mess with it, people will steal it. That's just how I argue with it and to explain how that goes. So the ways to get around this is to purchase or manufacture prefab storage facilities, and then you have it unlimited. As long as you can keep putting more storage facilities out, you have unlimited amount. Or you could build another storage facility, which increases, I want to say it's 150. I'd have to go look it up. Let's just say 150. So you have a maximum of 300 tons of capacity total in your exchange and your warehouse combined, which means your exchange would be losing money on that much stuff. You've flooded your market for that item. My iridium is now so abundant, it's now worthless. And if I have a chance to keep shoveling it off into a warehouse, though, I could bring that value back up by reducing the supply on the market. This plays a double role. So when that big cargo cruiser comes along at some point and is looking to buy 200 tons of iridium, and I happen to have 150 of it in my warehouse and 50 on my exchange, I'm selling it for 50, 0.5 credits per ton. Well, now I can turn around and I can sell that surplus I have in the warehouse at a half a credit a ton and bank about 80-90 credits. So, if you have that rate down lower, if it's at 25 and you're paying 75 credits at valued at 75 credits a ton, that will net you more, but it has to be so when the cruiser shows up that cycle, that's the cycle's numbers you use. You can't really get too creative with your exchange, though. Once again, if you choose to do that, it's not my point to say anything one way or another. Now, when I look at my notes here, I know it's been through, we're into my third cycle, so I've got to change these things here. So I'm researching, my research facility is researching AR weapon, automatic rifles, which is a Tech 2 technology. I now have 2 cycles left to go before that's completed. My shipyard is yet to produce anything because we go back to the ship components. So when I looked at purchasing ship components, the item for that cargo bay, for example, is 12.5 credits or 13.5 credits to purchase new. And if I can get a used one or a damaged one, I get it much cheaper, or I negotiate with it, I can get it cheaper. By right, I could go and have my finance minister or my house lord go and negotiate with the captain who's selling that stuff to see if I can get it at a cheaper rate. How much work do you want to put in? How much effort do you want to put in? How much paperwork do you want to put in? That's just up to the individual who's running or playing the game. So the other option is, of course, is to produce your own. So because all Tech 1 blueprints, all Tech 1 technology is something you start out with, I can go to my shipyard and I can task my shipyard to manufacture that component. Here's the deal that goes with that. That would cost an outlay of 1.5 credits and 5 cycles of production from the shipyard to produce that cargo bay. But that cargo bay also requires a certain amount of raw and manufactured material, construction materials, steel, so on and so on. So I think it was only like four components are needed for the manufacture of a cargo bay. So I would need those quantities, and I would need that 1.5 credits in advance. Then I would spend them to spend the next 5 cycles for my shipyard to produce this. Now, my shipyard could also do it on speculation. Speculation means I'm going to pay the 12.5 credits that it would cost me to buy a new cargo bay, and I'm using that excess credits to purchase the materials that I don't have through another source, i.e. through my platinums or through the black market or whatever. And this is just kind of a dodge a little bit to allow the house to be able to manufacture crap that it needs. Now the caveat is must be a blueprint you have. So in order to be able to manufacture the assault rifles, which is a Tech 2 item, I need to have a blueprint design. I need to have the design team create them. Now, I could purchase the blueprints for these things. Merchants will come. That's part of the special cargoes. You will occasionally get opportunities to purchase blueprints. Sometimes new platinums will arrive and they will bring with them blueprints. Or if you really want to get cheeky and you can find a neighboring house somewhere, you can send your spies over there and try to steal it or negotiate with them just to purchase it outright. But they actually have value, and of course, the higher the technology, the blueprint is a lot more expensive. So there's a lot of options and opportunities. Sometimes pirates will steal them and come and look to sell them on the cheap. It's rare, but the event's there, so it can occur and does occur. So we're back to that. How much can you spend? So my negative. If I purchased everything I wanted to purchase, I would be almost 254 credits in the hole, which means I would have no surplus. I couldn't pay my shipyard to manufacture this item. I can't build anything. I can't purchase anything else because I'm already in a hole. I need my exchange to generate enough funds to make up for the negatives and things of that nature. So anyway, and that way I'm not doing it here, but I also have my 2 research labs that came with my research facility that are 2 cycles away from being completed. One is researching one of the faunas that I had discovered during the exploration phase, and the other one is researching the gargantuan fauna, and so we'll deal with that. As for build Q, I still want to build a housing concern 1, and to do that I have to go and look up the blueprints and see what a housing concern requires, and maybe I'll pass all the ship components and other stuff. Let's see. infrastructure. Gotta do a deal on. Gotta do something on that here soon too, because that's something we need to be looking into. Okay, so housing, residential builds. All right, so the housing complex one, which is once again comes down to how you choose to lay it out. This could be one big huge apartment block. And the way these, and it actually goes and explains, it's talking about, so the residential, not only is it's housing, it's like, it's got some small areas for shops, commercial shops, some light entertainment venues, things like this. So, you know, a housing complex and other residential builds represent small cities or large towns. Rather, they're spread out in the traditional way with street grids, plenty of small family homesteads, commercial blocks filled with strip malls and small mom and pop stores, or if constructed in a single high-rise building. Housing serves to provide the citizens of any given rural home and community. Some residential builds can be divided up into smaller towns simply by noting that they have been constructed in sub-builds format and spread out over an area map. This way, a house may create numerous communities on a planet's surface. Connected by infrastructure, these communities can serve as factory builds, or disperse population against raids and off-world attacks. So my housing complex is enough housing for 10,000 people comfortably, or 15,000 people in very cramped quarters, and it gives you a negative on your social status chart if you choose to go down that rabbit hole. And so your housing, my housing colony, or my colony came with a single house one or Tech One housing built, and so I basically have a giant apartment building, if you want, that holds 10,000 people and a number of small shops, mom and pop operations, things like this, to give them service. And or I could choose to break it up into 10 smaller builds across the community, or if I choose to just say I now have a neighborhood that has 10,000 people in it. And if I average four people to a house, then you're looking at about 2,500 family home kind of setup. It's a matter of how you choose flavor-wise to put it out there. So to build a second one, I mean, if you hit the max, so my population is a little over 10,000. It's working at 10,100 and something at the moment, and I think 10,080 or 10,090. Anyway, it hits 15,000 and it stalls. There's no more places for them to grow, and they're not going to build. There are some rules to have what you might call a shanty town. I call them slap dashes or tech zero builds. They're available. They're very inefficient. They're very material wise. They take a little bit more than what it would be to build a proper place, and there's problems with them. And there are some event rules that cause them to be created. It can happen, just like your social issues can get out of hand. If your housing hits its limit, then you start seeing an exodus. Not necessarily the population's all going to move away, but you're going to see it'll be much harder for new ships coming in to bring you higher level technicians and specialists and things like this, because there's nowhere for them to go, and they're not going to stay there. They're just not going to get off the ship. They're going to keep going. So my first construction project I want to build is another housing concern. I want to expand my capability for having population. So I need 10 tons of, since I'm on a 1.5 build modifier for my planet, I'm going to need, the basis if we're on Earth would be 10 tons of construction material. Then everything else starting at 1.5 and up. So if I'm on a planet with a build modifier of 5, I would need 50 tons of construction material. So I need 15 tons of construction material, and I need 7.5 tons of hardware, and I need 32.5 tons of housing material, and 7.5 tons of tools. Plus, it's going to cost me, build cost is 76 plus times the build modifier. So, excuse me, my math is instantaneous anymore. So 76 times 1.5 equals 114 credits, plus 114 credits. Well, now see, there's where I start running into some problems from my exchange, because I'm still trying to get my exchange up and running. Financially, I'm broke. by purchasing everything I did, I'm at zero, so I have no surplus. I can't put anything in here, although I have started putting material into my warehouse to allow for this. So if we look at the construction material, for example, on my exchange, my factories currently produce 22 tons. My colony uses 9.6 tons of it, which gives me about a 12.4 ton surplus every cycle. And I've been diverting uh, half of it, or 10 tons of it into my warehouse, and the rest of it out onto the exchange. And somehow, yeah. And so I have the construction material easily met. So that part's met. And then I go down to housing material. I still only got about half the housing material I need to build this housing complex. And then hardware, HA. I have plenty of hardware. So I have, and then tools. Let's see. I have all I have all the material except half of the housing material required, and of course the credits to pay for it. This brings me into a problem. So in order for me to initiate the build queue, once all those the price is met and the materials required is met, then you can tell your queue to build, and it takes 5 cycles to construct. This is where my house came with construction outfit. House ran part of the House Commerce and Labor Ministry, and so now with this second outfit showing up, I actually now have 2. So one of those things I could choose to do is negotiate with my housing platinum to pay the difference. You know what I'm saying? Ask them if they can pay the credits, and say that in another cycle or 2, I will have the materials required, but I still will, it's probably going to be 2 or 3 cycles, and that's assuming I don't spend money on anything, and my exchange manages to get up out of the hole and get back into the black. So we're going to do a brief thing on that. So I popped up a bio sheet, and I created my housing platinum, and I did one for my house lord, and I'm going to do it later down the road. I will do much more detailed version. Some of the one I did for like Fred Dodge, a full sheet, because these are important. These are important characters and non-player characters in your house, and you will find these people that you will utilize them and interact with them more frequently than you might think you would if you play the way I tend to play anyway. So just to be funny, I'm going to name my housing platinum Red Baron, because one of you guys are, Red Baron's one of my subscribers, and I'm just kind of an homage to that individual. So anyway, and it's going to be pretty slender. I don't need to go through a whole lot of stuff with this. One thing right out the gate, because the housing platinum is seeking to set up their own little town, Barronville. How's that? Barronsville, right? That sounds good. The house lord is just going to flat out levy a 5 credit expense for the purchase or in perpetuity of renting that property. So now the housing platinum is a landowner on the colony world, and let's say I sell them for 5 credits. I'm going to sell them 50 square miles, or 50 square kilometers at 5 credits. Now, you probably won't keep that in mind, and I wouldn't blame you. But down the road, this actually matters, because this now sets the basis for what the value of a hectare and a kilometer is on the planet. And as things progress and the planet becomes more developed, bigger entities come along. A guild comes along, and they want to build a guild operation on a planet. I now have a basis to charge them for land, and then I also have a basis to understand what to charge them for a monthly or each cycle for rent. It's the same thing. So the housing minister, or the housing platinum, is going to get his little village, and this will be the foundation for a second settlement on the planet, and it will be named after him and his family. And the first thing I want to ask him is he intending to build an estate there? That is a fairly expensive build. I mean, it's moderately expensive, but it has some perks and some additive advantages to both the house, the planet, the income, and the flavor of the planet. So the first thing I want to do is, will the Platinum build an estate? And so we're going to go do, the roll, and it's a 1. Really? He's not planning down. No, he says. And -1 too. That error 1 too. That really drives any kind of follow up down to the bottom. Because like I said, there's a setup for doing these things. And I find the right chart. Bad. It's on the other side of this one. Yeah, I think this is investigations. No, this is investigations. This is the quick combat sheet. Interstellar Frontiers quick combat for Navy, naval stuff. Yeah, a lot of stuff for combat. Yeah, that day's coming too. At some point I'm going to do combat, and it'll be something else. Social interaction, and that's if I wanted to try something funny. Line creation. I suppose that damn chart's somewhere else, is it? Because I used it not that long ago. I try to get things prepared. I try to be ready. I spent 20 minutes before even starting this video doing my paperwork and math, trying to get everything I should have done last night just to be done with it. And yeah, we'll just use that bottom one, the interaction chart. There's the mechanical yes, no, or maybe. That's a hard no. He's not going to build, and it puts a -30 for any follow-up questions. So, which ironically, I would like. Will you pay for houses next housing concern? That's a -30. And because they're both social status is about the same, the standard of living is the same, they're moderate, their modest modifiers cancel each other out. So I'm looking for as high a bloody number as I can get, remembering that my yellow is my 10s. So a 54 minus 30 is a 24, is a soft maybe. All right. Which is also -2 now, so -2%. So now this adds up. So the 30 plus the 2, now I have a -32%. So I will caveat that, say pay 75% of it. And that means they would pay 75% of 114 credits. And 28. Well, 32 minus 20 is a hard 0. So at this point, now I would add another 30 to that, would be -64. And yeah, no. Okay, so the Platinum is not building a estate today. So that doesn't mean that an event roll won't come up down the road, but I won't ask him either. I won't go back and keep asking. I won't keep asking in negotiations for this individual to do this. So maybe she's off. I'm charging him 5 credits for 50 kilometers of land. That's a lot of land for a really cheap amount. I mean, it really puts, all it does is help put my negative surplus or my exchange into a positive of 5 credits for the end of this cycle. But at the end of the day, that's all there was to it. I mean, the last thing to do is you set up some kind of planetary map thing for it, and we'll call, like I said, we'll call it Baronsville. And then I'll take up my little list of prefabs and stuff and speckle them around here, and that'll be that on that one. So there you go. That's the end of cycle 9. Going on, my friends? This is Rick, and hey, if you like the channel, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, tell your buddies, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, tell anybody else that's in the gaming industry or gaming fandom that says, hey, this is a channel worth checking out, right?